We're up. All right. It's 3:30. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Executive Committee of the Dunn County Board to order. Call the roll. All of our members are here except for Tom Quinn. Approval of the minutes. Motion by Supervisor Steen. Seconded by Supervisor Morehouse. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Public comments, and I do believe we have some. So please come on up to the podium and give us your name and address, and we will give you 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Lorene Vetter. I live at 515 21st Street North in Menominee. I am a medical doctor who's retired. I retired from internal medicine. I thank you for this opportunity to address my concern about delivery of healthcare in our county, state, and country. My chief concern is a decreasing life expectancy that we have in this country. If you compare Canada to the United States, they live 4.5 years longer than we do in this country now. Back in 1970, we lived the same life expectancy. So why? Why are we seeing this difference? People are afraid here in our country to access health care. This is because of the excess cost of medical care. 30 million people in this country don't have health care insurance, and 44% total of Americans don't have the funds to obtain medical care, even if they have insurance. In the 1970s, copays and deductibles were a big thing. They were meant to discourage the public from freely accessing healthcare to hold down costs. The result of this, we access healthcare a lot less than any developed country in the world. Actually, developed country in the world. By avoiding healthcare, we have our people of our country coming to emergency rooms when it's too late to treat them. Their disease is too advanced. We bankrupt people over medical bills. Nowhere else in the developed world are people bankrupted by their health. Employers are expected to provide health insurance. Costs are now shifting over toward the employees because the businesses can't afford the health insurance. And salaries are held down because of employers trying to provide health insurance. I imagine you in the county are suffering from this because you have a lot of employees that you have to give health insurance to. I'm sure it's getting to be a bigger and bigger part of your budget. Okay, single payer in this country would decrease expenses because it would eliminate insurance middlemen. The insurance middlemen have to advertise. They have to have more administration because they do denial of care and they delay care. And they have to make a profit for their shareholders. I have a proposed referendum for the people of Dunn County in regards to single payer health care. And this does not have the political buzzwords that would scare people. Could you put this referendum on your executive committee agenda in July? I also have an electronic letter from Steve Carlson in Trago about healthcare in our country, and he has links to healthcare in other developed countries. And may I send that electronic copy to you so you can take a look at those links from Steve? Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. I've had a little discussion with the director of our legislative agenda committee, and we're going to put it on the legislative agenda committee because that would be the appropriate committee to take a look at it.
Okay, thank you very much.
I believe.
Yeah.
Gary?
And the legislative committee will be meeting prior to our next executive board meeting.
When will that be?
It'll be 1 month from now.
Okay.
Yep.
First Wednesday?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the
Right.
earliest it could happen because so we're happy to do that is all I'm
Okay,
saying.
wonderful, wonderful.
yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so much.
But it could possibly
meeting later. Our county board meeting in July is.
Yep.
So maybe we'll decide today what day it wants to be.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other public comment?
Greetings, members of the county board. My name is Greg. I live at N6344280th in Menominee, Wisconsin, and grateful for the opportunity to speak to you all today. I am advocating for what Lorraine had just spoken about, and just to sort of piggyback on some of what she said involving our national and local and state and basically all of the healthcare in this country. As somebody who has had a major medical emergency within another country, as well as a major medical emergency within this country, I can speak to you right now that the experiences I have had and the perspective that I have had on our healthcare system is absolutely appalling. When you look at not only the cost of care, but the quality of care and the infrastructure that lies within the medical system in terms of billing and administration and everything that entails. And so I am advocating, obviously, that that you move the motion forward to leave what would not be the executive committee, but the committee that you had spoken out and about. And I also wanted to sort of piggyback with what Lorraine had said in terms of not only the cost to the individual, but the cost of small business owners such as myself. It pains me when our revenue can't provide appropriate health care for our employees or can't provide appropriate health care for the individuals that we serve. And I'm sure from a county, city, and local perspective, that you guys are either feeling that or will be feeling that as we live in this wonderful time of free trade and commerce and capitalism, which I am very much in support of. When you have an infinite demand on something such as human life, health, the will to have, things that are absolutely necessary, that demand becomes infinite and the cost then just raises. And, it becomes something that is incredibly difficult to fight unless regulations or unless leaders within our local, state, federal, national governments can make those type of decisions to, advocate that we all have the basic human right to healthcare. So I graciously thank you for your time, and I will take no more of it. Thanks much.
Could you just give us your last name and spell it, please?
Sure. My last name is Manning, Manning.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. My name is Mike Brandt, BRNDT, and I live at 515 21st Street North here in Menominee. I was bicycling the other day and I went through the fairgrounds, and I noticed a couple of electricians working. I've done electrical work and I know what that's about. And they were working on a distribution system for power to all the outlets for the campers, I guess, for the people that go in the park. And I go through the park now and then, and I notice that usually on Thursdays, people start coming here and with their campers, and by Friday it's full. And usually they're pretty full on Saturday. Now, all that has to do with one thing, and that's the races. And I live where I can hear them. Quite a few of us do. And not only that, I'm asthmatic and I have a degree in biology. I know what those particulates do to lungs, and I've seen when they're roaring in the race, the cloud come up out of there of black, dark particulates coming out of that mess. I know the CO2 production, and even though I'm hard of hearing, I sure as hell can hear them. what bothers me in seeing our monies being put into the camping sites is I hope you don't see this as a permanent answer for us. There are many of us who oppose the use of your facilities, our facilities for this. And I hope you look at it real hard and think about what else you can do with that facility. Electric wouldn't be bad. They accelerate like gangbusters. Oh, they don't produce a lot of CO2. Oh, there's fuel left for people that want to get to work. Oh, yeah, there are a lot of good reasons to step forth and act like intelligent beings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? Going once? All right, with that, we will close public comments. Thank you. Report of the county manager.
Let me find my screen share here. There we go. First, I'll go over the draft county board agenda. Not a lot to cover here. A lot of the things that come before executive committee in the form of reports and even resolutions, all of those things are pretty much in here, but we've got minutes, public comments, appointments. I don't know if there are any purchase orders over $40,000, but we will we'll report on those. We'll have a budget process update. And is there anything else that you would like me to address at the meeting that I could add onto the agenda? Okay, well, if there is, in the next day or two, feel free to give me a call or send me an email and I'll add it on. This month, we have Public Health, Veteran Service Office, and Highway Operations giving a report. The executive committee will have, I'm anticipating, 2 resolutions. One is for budget adjustments, and you'll be talking about that a little bit later. And then the other one is a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes. This is borrowing that is being done in accordance with a resolution that was adopted by the county board back in November to approve borrowing for the 2022 segment of the capital improvement plans. That's this year. Some of the projects are underway. Some county funds have been spent for them. Some of them have been carryover funds from last year. But the long and short of it is, if we don't issue if the county board doesn't approve these general obligation bonds, whatever was in the 2022 capital improvement plan will have to be revamped. Most of it will have to be abandoned. And whatever funds have been spent from the general fund in anticipation of receiving these revenues will not be recoverable from borrowing. Next is the Planning, Resource and Development Committee. There are 2 rezone ordinances that have been passed up, will be coming to the county board. And then the Highway Committee has an ordinance amendment that creates some additional ATV trails. And then are there any committees that wish to give a report on any items at the county board?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Would you, as part of the report, would you like to, well, I think in probably the July meeting, we'll have information about which is the next meeting. We'll have information about new staff There will be we'll have a human services director on board by then, I think. And so I'll add that up for information under report of the county manager. And I'll need to check and see if we need to have a resolution appointing the human services director, because I can't remember what we did the last time. Okay, well, then I'll include that. Anyway, and then setting the next meeting. Well, I guess that's the date is wrong there. I'll have to fix that. It's hard to believe that we're in June already. This is a document that I edited and then I somehow managed to close it without saving it. So the dates in there are off. I wanted to make sure the content was correct. So I need to change a couple things, but yeah.
Supervisor
I-
Steen, did you have a? Okay.
My objective was in order to get it out timely, I just went for content and I got to change the dates back again. So that's a review of the draft of the county board agenda for, well, that's for next week. July will be the with some announcements. Anyway, if there are any questions, I can answer them. Or if you have any suggestions for including anything, just let me know.
Well,
I apologize. I have a cold. I don't have COVID. I have a cold.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing the last few years because
In July,
August
it will
meeting.
be. Yeah. It's county ordinance sets it as the last Wednesday in July. The purpose of that was to help bridge the gap because there was no regular meeting in August. So it would allow, a little more work to get done and come before the county board before that large, before that 8-week time off.
Mhm. And then presumably we'll bump exec up as well.
That's something I'm going to ask you to consider at the end of your meeting today, is whether or not you wish to move the executive committee meeting to 1 week later too, just to allow some of those things that might come up to come in before the executive committee. So that instead of the second Wednesday, it could be the third. It's not really, that's the chair's call, so.
Does anyone have an objection to moving that up? Okay, I think that will be the case then.
Let me see. I'm gonna close my. Gonna stop screen sharing.
That would be the 20th for the exec and the 27th for
Yes,
county board for July.
yeah, 20th for executive committee and
27th.
legislative committee,
Oh, yeah.
and then
legislative.
27th for county board. Thanks. The other thing I have noted is highway department roof repair. So the highway committee had considered repairing the roof and approved it, provided funds were available. As part of the capital improvement plan, there was also some funding that was dedicated toward repair of the judicial center roof. The cost of that came in lower than expected, which left funds available. In fact, I think they're doing the judicial center HVAC with the leftover funds, and there's still enough for repair of the highway department roof. And so that Dustin had gotten some bids on it. And the money it's a capital improvement funds. And it's in the facilities department budget. And at some point, we're going to have to do some kind of an adjustment to make sure that the books are right, because the value of the highway department building is going to increase as an asset. And it would, for bookkeeping purposes, it would be desirable to have it offset by, a revenue or expenditure. And we engaged in this brief philosophical debate about whether it was a highway department issue because it's the highway department building, or whether it's a facilities department issue because it's a facility, a building owned by the county. And rather than continue that, I just told them to go ahead and get working on it, because the bid that we got, things are going up, costs are going up, and the contractor said that they would honor the contractor they wanted to go with. Said they would honor the bid that they provided. And so I just had them go ahead with that. So there are funds available. They're carryover funds from capital improvement. The intent of these specific funds was to be utilized for roof repair anyway. And so we're going to sort it out, I think, next month as far as the accounting. Sarah will work with me on that and make sure that we get everything entered into the books the way it's supposed to be.
And as I recall, it was a very favorable bid. We
It was.
Wanted to take advantage of it.
It was, and I think it's the same company that did the judicial center, and apparently they did a really good job. So that's what I'm told.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to let you know what's going on. So I felt it was better to move ahead with it and then sort out the budget issue at a later time, just to take advantage of the bid and the timing of it, availability of funds. And that's all I have on
Neat.
that.
Any questions for the county manager? Doesn't look like it. Okay, on to the county manager recruitment process.
If you wish, this is something that you could place at the foot of your agenda.
I was wondering if that wouldn't.
You have open session items that you need to discuss, and then closed session items that you need to discuss. And then, so for convenience of staff and so forth, if you want to put it at the foot of your agenda, you may.
Without objection?
No,
I know, I think as long as no one objects, we're good. All right. So we will come back to number 6, and 7. 8, reports, resolutions, and ordinance of the county board from the executive committee. Resolution authorizing issuance and sale of not to exceed 1 million general obligation promissory notes series 2022A. Nick, do you want to address that?
I can. I talked about it a little bit already. This is implementation of the authorization that was done by the county board last fall to issue to borrow in order to implement the capital improvement plan for 2022. And this is styled as what's called a parameters resolution. So it creates rules, boundaries, conditions, and then authorizes the county manager, including the interim county manager and the chief financial officer, to sell and issue and sell general obligation promissory notes in order to fund capital improvements for 2022. Dunn County has employed this technique a number of times in the past of designating the county manager and the CFO to do it. If that's not your preference, we can obviously modify that. Other alternatives might be the county board chair and the county clerk. It works very well because we can be on the phone with our financial advisor and in real time decide when to make the decision. We're probably starting up on this maybe a little later than it would have been optimal. And bringing it to the county board to be the decision maker. The earliest we could do it would be August. It could theoretically be done in July, but the Fed meets on that week of the county board meeting to tinker with and discuss and make decisions regarding interest rates. And apparently the market gets a little skittish when stuff comes out for sale at the same time the Fed is meeting. And it can be a little bit undesirable, I guess, potentially. And so they advised us against that. Doing it this way would allow us to work closely with Baker Tilly and make a decision about when would be when would be a good time to make the sale.
Yeah, and as I recall, the last time we did it this way, Keith Stray was able to take advantage of we had a window where we were able to get much better rates than we might have.
That's correct. Mileage may vary, but hopefully that will be the case.
So Supervisor Steen,
I would so move for this. Although if someone wanted to add, like the county chair, as part of the group, that to me, that would be appropriate.
I'm comfortable with it either way.
You'll just need to be available on short notice.
Yeah, that's the one issue. I'm not always available on short notice, but I can certainly do that.
Yeah, so my motion is that we add the county chair to the 2-man, now 3-man authorization to do this.
All right, may I suggest first have a motion to adopt the resolution or, approve it
And
and then amend it as you wish.
I was just thinking that. I move we adopt the resolution.
Supervisor Steen moves. Do I have a second? Tom got in just ahead of you. Supervisor Quinn in seconds.
Okay, Quinn, okay.
All right, speaking to the motion. Mike, you have a Supervisor Rogers.
So I guess as Supervisor Steen said, add the chair, I feel would be important because as much as I oppose bypassing the county board in any situation, I understand the need for it and don't disagree with it, but having at least one elected official
All right.
making that decision makes a lot of sense.
So. Yeah, someone.
Yes, if you make a motion to amend it to include the county board chair.
Motion by Supervisor Steen, second by Supervisor Rogers. Any further discussion on the amendment? Supervisor Quinn?
I don't want to complicate things, but is there if you're, I don't know how unavailable you are, Mr. Chairman, but
I'll make sure that
okay, so it's not a problem. All right. Then no comment.
no, it's a little bit of extra hoop. I can make that happen.
So now vote on the amendment.
Yeah, any further discussion of the amendment? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes. Now voting on the amended motion. Any discussion of the motion?
No,
I don't think so.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, resolution for budget adjustment, Human Services Department, Health Department. Supervisor Morehouse.
I move approval of the Human Services and Department of Health budget adjustments.
All right, discussion of the motion.
just by way of background, I mean, they're pretty
It's
self-explanatory. They're,
bookkeeping.
it's grants that got awarded later and car seats.
Any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now, review. Tom, Planning Resources and Development Committee.
Yeah, so we are two rezone requests, both of which are pretty straightforward and will be explained well in the document, so I don't anticipate. Could you put it in committee?
Tom, push your mic.
Sorry. Again, we'll bring forward two rezone requests that were approved by the committee without objection and approved by the towns in which they were, they're occurring with unanimous votes too. So we don't really have anything to add beyond what's on the report already.
Thank you. Highway Committee,
Yes,
Supervisor Johnson.
thank you. The committee looked at these trails at length. They meet the criteria set by the committee, such as site, length, and traffic count. So
All right. Reports from standing committees. Oh, let's start with Diane.
Okay, thank you.
HHS.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to report on two things, but both are in the purview of the Health and Human Services Board. In case any of you have forgotten, the long delayed housing study kicked off on Monday. Supervisor Rogers joined an advisory committee. There were 13 members present, educators, bankers, developers, to meet with West Central Regional Planning to talk about the housing study, to get additional input. It's estimated that that committee will meet probably 4 times over they've extended the timeline a little bit over the 10 months of the housing study, but that's the actual work in gathering data is about to go forward. And I don't even remember when we brought this up, but it's nice to have it. It's nice to have it moving forward. The Health and Human Services Board last met on May 26th. We had a really short meeting because we had a very busy week. We did have an orientation session for our 3 new board members, 2 of whom attended the orientation session before the meeting. And then I have some big news. The whole Health and Human Services Board, with Jenna's able assistance, participated in an interview and selection process for a new human services director. I think arguably one of the more important jobs in the county. We had a very strong applicant pool of 16 that got whittled down to 7 for initial interviews. We did a second round of interviews with 3 candidates, including a kind of work project that candidates were obligated to provide a kind of scenario about something that the director needed to convince the Health and Human Services Board to move forward on. That was a very helpful and interesting exercise. We had 4 internal candidates, each of whom were interviewed, but we unanimously elected to offer the position to Paula Winter. She is currently the Human Services Director in Pepin County. She has accepted our verbal offer, and we are hoping, I'm looking at Jenna, we're hoping that she's going to start at the end of June so that there will be a month of overlap with Chris Corpola. And, we will all agree, I think that's important. Is there a date, Jenna? July 5th. Okay. I think you'll be very happy to meet her. I think you'll be very pleased. The committee's decision was unanimous.
Nick, was there something okay.
Well, I had my reading glasses on, so I
Okay.
was kind of straining to see where Jenna was.
I just saw you tense up, so.
I
I
was
did
looking,
something wrong?
Nope. All right, Mike. All right, I suppose I should be doing this more formally. Thank you Supervisor Morehouse. Supervisor Kinnear, neighbors.
Thank you. The neighbors of Dunn County committee hasn't met since our last executive committee meeting. But a few things that Carmen shared with me, their fundraising is going on still. The 34,000 out of the 90 they need for the bus that they want to get, that we want to get. Some fundraising activities this next Tuesday. Is it Ludington Guard Band? So all the pies and everything, that's theirs. So anybody wants to make a dessert, I'm sure that the neighbors would accept. And there's a golf tourney in August towards the end. It'd be kind of fun if some of us got together, supervisors kind of represented the county and got a foursome going, or maybe as a supervisor, you want to get your own foursome going. It'd be kind of fun. So they're working hard on that and doing a good job. As far as staffing and residents goes, we still 7 of the 9 households there are pretty much full. One of them is closed and another one is partially full, and that would be fuller if we didn't have some COVID situations that prevent us from accepting people. So we've got a little over 100 people there right now, and I guess maybe 138 is the tops or something like that, 135. And we could take a few more, but of course we're constrained by being able to hire staff. COVID's been relatively mild, although there got some cases and either asymptomatic or just mild symptoms, which is good. We're still trying to get a CNA training going in-house to try and get our own CNAs going. And we're working on that, trying to get a nurse trainer position set up. And our next meeting is the 23rd of this month.
Thank you Supervisor Kinnear. Supervisor Quinn, PRD.
Mixing it up. We have had a pretty quiet period.
Oh.
We've had a pretty quiet period for our committee. By our usual standards. So we've had the 2 rezone hearings since our last meeting. And those are coming forward to the board at this meeting. We also had some really good discussions about some of the issues we want to deal with in the next year. And Anne is going to be putting time in on and presenting to us for discussion that has to do with multifamily zoning in general commercial areas, something that we need to take a look on and kind of make sure we have clarity about where that's going to be based on what happened recently in the town of Menominee. The whole contractor storage ordinance question, we'll be looking at that probably at our next meeting. And then the whole question of how to define agriculture entertainment areas and if we need to modify our ordinance with that. And I think that plus general discussion sums up what we've been doing.
Thank you Supervisor Quinn. Supervisor Hepland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our admin committee met back on June you met in June. Yeah. Or excuse me, May 28th. And anyway, we haven't met yet in June. I'm pushing the envelope way too far. And summer's flying by. And pretty quiet meeting, I'll say for admin. One thing we did do though is we took a look at the social media platform for the county employees and had a pretty good discussion of that and a good presentation by IT. And some suggestions were made for moving forward. And probably the biggest change is that if someone in a department wants to post something about that department, or if they're looking to advertise for a fundraiser, whatever it may be, or any comments about what's going on in their department, that'd be approved by that director. If it's something that affects the whole county, I would say, or the whole county staff, that would need to be approved by the board chair. And any questions there would go beyond that, would probably end up at corp counsel or IT director. But again, because of just the sensitivity that social media can present and the fact that it never really goes away. If you think about it, you post something out there and there are programs now that apparently can dig off social media posts from whenever and bring them back up. And so it's become an issue that you just really need to be careful with. And that's, I guess, was the main part of our discussion. We did approve the new policy and hopefully it'll take us down the right road, and I think it will. Beyond that, we had some, always approved or have always approved anyway, and did approve our vouchers. Some questions, as usual, come up about that, and those answers have already been sent out, and so everybody should feel good about that. Next meeting coming up here, June 23rd at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Headland.
If I-
Supervisor Rod, oh,
I'm sorry, if I might, the authority to approve was given to the county manager.
okay.
That particular authority applies to when something that would be of great interest to the county board in general, but doesn't fall under any particular department's responsibility would come up. It gives another authority to, to say, yes, it's okay to put something up on our Facebook page or whatever. But for example, library research, research on library utilization. We don't have a library department, so that's all.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Supervisor Rogers, facilities.
So we met on May 25th. We did receive some public comment from GFL letting us know they're still interested in leasing or buying the transfer station. We were also presented with some township letters agreeing the transfer station should be reopened. The committee opened preliminary discussions to address the future use of the transfer station. Hopefully, we can get a private company to lease the property or lease it to provide the county with the services that the county has come to expect. A sale of the property is still an option to bring some money back to the county. We won't have control over the services that are provided if we sell it versus leasing it. But both are viable options that are beginning the conversation at this time. The fans for the cattle barn are moving forward. The cost came in at $1,000 above budget, so this will have to come out of their operating expenses. Facilities reported discussing moving facilities office back into the government center. Currently, they've moved into the house behind, and now the utilities and all of that expenses comes out of their budget, and they'd kind of like to move back in, and hopefully they can look at finding someone to rent that for some offices or other uses. Bids were received from the new highway roof we already discussed. You guys did. Highway department was looking at the judicial parking lot for the best route to repair that. No new update on any of the solar projects at this time. And we tabled the discussion on the camping in the parks. Currently, we're kind of waiting for corporate counsel to move forward with writing a resolution draft that we can address at the committee. Once we have that, we can further discuss the camping in the parks. At this time, the thought is leaning toward not having camping in the parks. We haven't got a lot of feedback from the community or people on it, but we're still moving forward with discussions. Our next meeting will be held on June 22nd.
Thank you, Supervisor Rogers. Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Highway Committee has not met since our last exec meeting, but I can assure you the highway crews are all repairing and reconstructing. There has been a lot of washing along the sides of the roads because of the heavy downpours, and that's it's been kind of a mess too, so. But that's all I have. Our next meeting will be the 15th at 8:15 or after directly following the transit. So, thank you.
Thank you Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Calabrese.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Judiciary and Law Committee met on May 23rd. And it was, I think, the briefest meeting I've ever been a part of on this board, about 15 minutes. But because there were no action items, but reports were issued by the departments, and one that I wanted to bring to your attention was from the district attorney, and she mentioned it at the first meeting I was a part of as well, about that, and I'll just read what her states here. The vacant assistant district attorney position remains unfilled. My office continues to advertise and try to solicit applicants to apply. Based on correspondence from other DAs, this is a common problem across the state. Some DAs are asking their county to step in and support the position by offering relocation funds, or have the county fund a position at a more competitive wage in an attempt to get applicants to apply. She said she's currently not requesting this, but just wanted to make the committee aware of it, should she. And so I wanted to make all of you aware of it too, because she also went on to say that she's had to cancel trainings and other things that would be beneficial to her and the department because she has to take on this extra workload. And so it's just something to pay attention to. And I'm not exactly sure what the next steps would be, how we might want to do relocation funds, but just something to keep in mind if it gets to be more of a stress on her department. And the Criminal Justice Collaboration Committee met there was two meetings on June 1st, and one was the Operations Committee. And it was a fascinating discussion to be a part of because it pertained to firearms removal process in Wisconsin. And we had two guests on the call, Alicia Nichols and David Keck from the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence and Firearms Battered Women's Justice Project, because there's a discussion of a battered women's shelter in Dunn County. And so the sheriff and Chief Atkinson were discussing what happens in domestic violence cases. And it's really interesting how there really aren't set statutes about how to assure that firearms are taken from a home of someone who has a felony on domestic violence. And basically the judge, and Judge Peterson was on there too explaining this, talked about how it's sort of an honor system where if the person who files the complaint doesn't talk specifically about a gun, they have to ask the felon, do you possess firearms? And if they say yes, then they say that they have to turn them over. And then Sheriff Bigg discussed how there's not even a set follow-up for that to see if they actually did turn them over. And so these two guests we had, David Keck was from Oshkosh and Alicia was in Minnesota. They talked about things that their counties are doing, making their own ordinances and plans to address that. And it didn't get resolved in that meeting, but we're going to meet again at a later date. So I found that very interesting. And then that same day, the Criminal Justice Collaboration Committee met with a meth strategies discussion. And that was a representative from the Menominee Police and Sheriff Bigg as well, talking about, and someone from Arbor Place in Menominee, just discussing prevention and strategies that they could coordinate with each other and just kind of report on what they're doing. They talked about the DARE program. Arbor Place mentioned a prevention program, and the Menominee PD talked about things that they're doing in schools, demonstrations, and they talked about a few programs that they had on there. And so it's been really good to see what the CJCC does. And it seems like such a necessary thing to coordinate all the law enforcement groups. And that Met Strategies Committee will also meet again. And the next Judiciary and Law is June 27th here at 4:30.
Thank you, Supervisor Calabrese. Supervisors Ons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We actually haven't met on the CR&T committee since our last meeting. Our next meeting is coming up on June 14th, but I just did want to remind everybody that we're still looking for content for the visitduncounty.com site. So to remind any of your constituents or community organizations to submit information for that when you have an opportunity. Also on our agenda for next Tuesday is one of the action items is to talk about having this some sort of entity, whether it's a county staffer or an outside agency or something that it can be in charge of communication and PR for the county. So it should be a real interesting discussion, and looking forward to putting something in front of this committee the next time that we meet after our meeting next Tuesday. So, and I just have to commiserate with Nick, because whatever this garbage cold thing, I've taken 3 COVID tests, they're all negative, and I was coughing and yes, that kind of stuff for pretty much the last 3 weeks, and it's going to take a while before it goes away. And that's all I have to report.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Zons. And I'll note that I brought up the website and mentioned it at City Council for Menominee. So thank you. Spread that around a little bit. All right, that is reports of committees. Supervisor Steen, we haven't met with the Legislative Committee, and that'll be next time. Do you have anything you need to add?
We're going to schedule for about 45 minutes before the executive committee. We should be able to get, and what I plan to do is, or what we plan to do is just bring up what was brought up last year and then urge our, the departments that you're in charge of to start the process again. And so that we can get started, I guess. And that's about it. Nick, I would ask if the people that spoke today on the healthcare for all, or whatever you want to call it, is going to come to the legislative meeting. Could you possibly put as an action item on the executive board meeting, possibly reacting to something that might come from the legislative committee that day? Okay.
I can, yes.
All right. The chairman and I discussed the possibility of perhaps having our legislative meeting earlier in the year, in the first couple of weeks of January, maybe. We thought maybe that would give us a better, well, who knows, but a better response, and maybe a better time frame for the legislators to take the ideas when before they go to Madison. So
Yeah, I had a brief coffee cup sit down with Clint Moses, and he suggested that so we were late in February last time, early in January would give us a much better window into the way the legislative process works, because that's when they would be discussing a lot of the issues that we would bring forward.
that's all I have. Looking forward to the inaugural meeting. Anybody that wants to bring treats, I'm okay.
All right, so that concludes the standing committee's reports. We've already dealt with setting the next meeting date, which takes us back to item 6 and the county manager recruitment process.
Now, you do have some items that you can take up and resolve, excuse me, before you go into closed session. So
Yeah, we can discuss timeline and meeting dates.
and our human resources director, Jenna Nutter, is on top of it and will provide you with some information. Press your microphone button.
I do have some information that I will be handing out that will include the timeline that we're looking at for the recruitment, but I will briefly go over that before we go into closed session. The position was posted starting May 2nd and closed at midnight on May 31st. last week and this week, we were reviewing the applications. Yesterday, we met with the subcommittee that includes Chairperson McCullough, Vice Chair Steen, and Supervisor Headland. We will be discussing candidate selections for the first round of interviews today. Looking at June 27th, 2022 for the first round of interviews to take place. Based on the number of candidates that are selected and discussed today, looking at a start time of about 8:15 for that day and would be ending around 5 o'clock. We are also planning to host a reception that evening at the Mabel Tainter Theater. The county clerk has been extremely helpful in bringing together some details for that, but looking at a 5:30 start time for that, and it would be a social hour for heavy appetizers and more of a meet and greet. The subcommittee did decide to invite all of the first round candidates to that reception later, as well as the executive committee and members of the community, as well as department heads from Dunn County that would choose to attend. We would expect about 50 people max. If the committee decides following June 27th that they want to do a second round of interviews, we are looking at July 6th, knowing that it could be tough with the holiday. And at that second round of interviews, we would pose more of a scenario-based question. I believe the next the July executive committee meeting was discussed to take place July 20th now. So the timeline that I will hand out is indicates July 13th, but looking to have the executive committee vote to forward a recommendation to the board for the final candidate selection. And then ideally would be what the board would be voting on July 27th for appointing the county manager.
Yeah, and if I might, we discussed possibly having a special meeting of the executive committee earlier. I think that's quite likely to be the case.
So ultimately would be looking at the candidates starting in August or September of this year, depending on their personal situation.
And I believe after that, we need to go into closed session for much of the rest of this discussion.
Yes.
Do you want to have the executive committee vote and endorse
we're
that plan?
I think probably we will want to discuss some of the aspects of it in the closed session. So I think that would be come out of closed session and vote on the timeline.
Okay, that's fine. I want to make it, the purpose of the closed session is to vet candidate materials. And
Yep.
so you can talk about this stuff to the extent that it relates to the planning and that, but you should do approval of the timeline and reception and all that out in open session. Yeah. And as some of you may know, as I have applied for the position myself, I'm going to leave all the legal work up to Jenna right now to handle the closed session so that I'm not present during your discussion.
All right, so we would need a motion to go into closed session and a second, and it will be a roll call vote. So Supervisor Steen and Supervisor Kinnear. Who is going to call the roll? Nick, is that going to be you before you head out?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Okay,
In no particular order, clockwise around our dais here. Supervisor Quinn, Supervisor Headland,
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers,
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson,
Yes.
Supervisor Calabrese,
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough,
Yes.
Supervisor Zons,
Yes.
Supervisor Steen,
Yes.
Supervisor Morehouse.
Yes.
Supervisor Kinnear.
Yes.
All yes votes, unanimous.
All right. We are. All right. So we are on our last item of the agenda. We will vote on the timeline. I'm going to have Jenna read it out to us so that we've got it solidly. We have also selected our pool of candidates. And that was the subject of the internal closed session. Timeline.
The committee discussed the timeline for the first round of interviews to take place on June 27th, starting at 8:15 a.m. Sorry, excuse me, looking at later in the day. So we will send out a confirmed start time for that day with the agenda items. The reception will take place later that night at 5:30 p.m. at the Mabel Teinter. The committee will meet at 11 a.m. on June 28th to select the top candidates and invite to the second round of interviews that will take place for a special meeting on July 6th, and that will take place in the afternoon.
All right. Do I have a motion approving the timeline? Supervisor Johnson, Supervisor Steen. Any further discussion on the timeline? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have our timeline, we have our candidate pool. I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. So we are adjourned.
Yeah, I just want to mention about the breakfast, dairy breakfast. Our beaches at 11, so. When's that? Big Town of Grant. Saturday, the 11th. I believe it starts at 7, maybe 6 or 7.
What a great birthday gift for her.
Pancakes, waffles,